welcome to Talkin' Jets. My name's Ryan, and I'll be your pilot tonight. I am joined alongside my lovely co-pilots. I have Mr. Dom C to my this way, and I have a special guest, Steph from Steph 49K. Steph, how you doing tonight?
I'm great. Thank you guys so much for having me on. I'm so excited for week one. I feel like this is a tremendous matchup for both of our teams. We're going to find out a lot, and so excited to be talking about it with you guys.
Yeah,
Dom, how you doing tonight?
I'm well. Kind of just dovetailing off of Steph's comments. I'm super stoked that we're finally in game week. I mean, the lead up and the off season seems like it seems like a little bit longer and longer every year. Knock on wood, we came out of this preseason from the Jets perspective relatively healthy, which is a good thing. And yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be a tough matchup for both teams. I'm just happy football's back, man. Happy football's back, and I'm really, really happy that Steph's here because, like I said, like I said off air, it's pretty cool to interact with and get the insight from the other team or opponents, content creators, and get the real kind of 411 on what's going on over there.
And while you guys are here, if you haven't hit that like button already, make sure you hit that like button. And if you want to find Steph's channel, down below in the description, it is linked down below there. Highly encourage you to go over there, get some insight on the enemy as we go into week one. Very exciting to get into this. I mean, the matchup, you couldn't have asked for a harder matchup, I think, from either one of our schedules. Are we your hardest matchup from like your scheduling standpoint? We're only underdogs in 2 games, and it's this game and Buffalo away for us.
I definitely think there's a few tough ones. I mean, the 49ers also play the Ravens this year, which we know how that one went for them last year. They play the Chiefs. We play the Lions. We play the Packers. Like our schedule's pretty tough. But this is definitely one of them. I would say for week one, especially with everything that has gone on this offseason, this is not a game I want to have happen in week one, but here we are.
Yeah, but here we are. That's a perfect way to say that. And, I wanted to just kind of start with this also. Like, what's I mean, prayers up to Ricky Pearsall. You know what I mean? Like completely crazy, tragic, incident that happened the other day. Thank God he's okay. But, what's the vibe like? What's it been like in 49ers world with the news of that break? And like, I know he's been, kind of injured and not really healthy all off season, but like this is a whole different type of thing. So what's the vibe going on like around San Francisco and around your world?
Yeah, I feel like as a whole, like after seeing that news, like it's scary, obviously. So I feel like in a way it did kind of rally the fan base together a little bit. But yeah, and also I don't know if you guys saw he was placed on the NFI reserve list, so he's not going to be active for the first 4 games of the season at the very least. And so I don't know. I think that along with like the Brandon Ayuk extension having happened just a couple of days before could maybe be a nice boost for the team going into the season, because it's been a hell of an off season and a kind of weird one, especially with the Brandon Ayuk stuff. So I think now being able to put that behind them and maybe galvanize the team a little bit, can't be a bad thing.
Gotcha. One more too about Brandon Ayuk. We know how talented he is, obviously. Listen, there was going to be no tears spilt over here if he happened to not sign for week one. That's the truth. But and again, this might be kind of a moot point. But if you had to choose one to go to war with week one, would it be Ayuk or would it be Trent Williams? If you had to only have one of them.
Trent. 100%. Yeah. Trent. And I'll just say that I think Trent is more important to the team because of the role he plays. I mean, he protects Brock Purdy, and if Brock Purdy doesn't have enough time to throw, there's really not much you can do. You can't throw it to Brandon Ayuk or a Debo, if you don't have Trent out there. So I'm sure we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that matchup without the potential of having Trent Williams there. But I got to tell you, I don't love it. So, yeah, I would have definitely preferred that they got the Trent Williams deal done before Brandon Ayuk. But again, here we are.
All All right, I got a few topics queued up. Before we get too far into it, I do want to let the chat know, if you guys haven't done so, we just decided to start up a Talkin' Jets Pick'em League. So all your favorite Jets content guys from the Talkin' Jets channel going to be over there. It's totally free to sign up. We're going to do Pick'em. Anyone who's in the Pick'em League will be qualified for our weekly t-shirt, jersey, hat, mug, pillow giveaway at the end of the Tuesday show, but you'll also be entered to win a jersey if you wind up winning the overall league. So all you have to do is click in the description down below. You'll see the link to the Pick'em League and come join us. We highly, highly recommend it. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right. So enough of that. Talk a little game overview. I guess we already kind of did that. I want to talk a little bit about Quinnen Williams and Aaron Banks. I've heard some of the Jet guys start talking about Aaron Banks, so I want to give you guys a little bit of insight into this. His pressure rate last year, he gave up 4.9% pressure rate. That was 47th of 79 guards. From a pass blocking perspective, he had a 55.2. That's 56th out of 81 eligible guards. And then a pass blocking grade when going against top 15 defensive tackles. Not the best. So I think the Jets might have a little bit of an upside, matchup potential on the interior part of this offensive line. Steph, what say you about Aaron Banks?
Yeah, I mean, I think Aaron Banks is the kind of guy that you can get away with having on your offensive line. Certainly, if you have a Trent Williams next to him, it does help his case a little bit. But obviously, even with that being a possible, let's just say Trent is there, right? I'm still not feeling great about this matchup with Quinnen Williams. I mean, obviously, Williams, one of the best in the game already. And I mean, interior pressure is something that can disrupt timing, could disrupt obviously the pocket and just anything that Brock Purdy could try to do. So I'm worried about this one a lot. And yeah, I think Kyle Shanahan will try to scheme around it. I mean, I think the fact that the 49ers haven't addressed offensive line as much as us 49er fans would like to, we always say like Kyle Shanahan feels he could scheme around it. He's going to try. I just don't know how successful he is going to be with this dominant of a defensive line week one, especially the way that last year went for the Jets. I feel like they're coming in with some new blood and trying to make it right from last year. So I think they're going to be hungry in this game. And I think Banks is in for a hell of a ride in this one.
Yeah. Dom, what do you think about the interior?
I mean, listen, and I don't mean this disrespectfully towards Steph, the 49ers, or Aaron Banks. I think Quinnen Williams is a matchup nightmare against anyone he lines up.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say the same thing, on the flip side with Nick Bosa and whomever. There's just some guys that are tough matchups. What I think and the best point that like I took from what Steph was saying is like we don't know, and we dealt with it when we took Laken Tomlinson on 2 years ago. Right, he came in and he was wonderful, and how much, and we talk about it in Jets world all the time. How much that was because he was playing next to Trent Williams, because he came in here and it looked like at times he forgot how to play football. Right, so I don't know. I can't speak to Aaron Banks, his overall skill set or his overall game, but it's always curious when you take somebody as good as Trent Williams away. Now it's not guaranteed that he's not playing yet, so time this week we'll see. But I'm interested to see how much that affects it. Not only that, starting Dominic Cooney, the rookie, on the right side, on the other, at the other guard is also first game in the NFL for a rookie is always tough. He's got Javon Kinlaw. You guys know him very well. There's that whole revenge factor. How much Kinlaw is going to be looking to get back or getting, and I would love, Steph, I would love for you to tell us a little bit of insider information on Kinlaw. Like, so far in camp, he's said and done all the right things. Looks like he's finally healthy. Looks like he came into shape. You have had experience with him for the past 4 years, so enlighten us on what we can expect from Kinlaw.
Well, unfortunately, because of the injuries, I feel like us 49er fans didn't really get to see like the full potential of Kinlaw until last season. Honestly, that was probably his best season as a pro. It seemed like the injuries were behind him at that point, or just better at managing, the pain and all of that. So he had some bursts, like he had explosiveness. I thought he was pretty disruptive. And so I think that's things you're going to be able to see, especially with the rest of the defensive line being as dominant as it is. I think that's going to help him as well. And, he was pretty dominant in one-on-one matchups too, which I think he's probably going to see a decent amount this year because he got Quinnen Williams next to him, right? So, yeah, I think, the change of scenery, obviously going back with Saleh, I think it's going to be great for him.
And
So
how much do you? I'm sorry, Rye. One more quick one.
Oh yeah, no, sorry. Go on.
I was just gonna say, how much of the Shanahan and Saleh kind of reunion, if you will, meeting on opposite sides, like how much do you think that plays into it? Do you think it's advantageous or disadvantageous to the coaches that they're very familiar with each other? Like, Shanahan went against Saleh's scheme for how many years and vice versa. Do you think that there's a little bit more in that? Do you think that they that kind of, and I'll use the word rivalry or friendship, plays into how they're going to coach against one another or what's going to go on? I'd love to hear from you on that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's a thing. I do feel like Kyle Shanahan does love playing against his former coaches. I think he kind of, like the Michael Jordan, and I took that personally meme, like even though there's no bad blood between them, like he ups his game a little bit against those. I think he enjoys wanting to beat his former coaches. We've seen that several times, but I will say, like, we haven't seen him coach so much against the defensive coaches that have left. Like we haven't seen him coach against 𝐒𝐿 Ryans. I'm trying to remember if there was a game where we played the Texans, and maybe one. And so I think that's where it's interesting because obviously it's more of a one-to-one matchup going up against each other. There is, of course, the familiarity factor in all of it that, yes, it helps, but this is a completely different personnel. One that I think is, we're talking about like one of the best defenses in the league. So I think it's going to be tough for Kyle Shanahan regardless in this game, especially with some of the outside factors that we're talking about here. Trent Williams not being signed yet. Is he going to play? Even if he does play, I'm not feeling so great about that. And then even Brandon Ayuk, if he goes into this game, like he's not going to be 100%. He might be on a snap count. All these things. There's so many factors that I think are going to make this a little more difficult for the 49ers in week 1. Like I said, I feel like Saleh and the Jets, like they're coming in, trying to get the season started off hot just based on how last season ended. So I feel like we'll be tested, definitely early on here.
Gotcha.
I could tell you for a fact, if the team feels any way like the fans do, we're out for blood. We had our season stolen from us week 1 of last year. I'm ready to come out and start swinging
plays into the season. For Christ's sake,
Jet fans are pent up for over a year on this excitement, so we are amped up right now. Lots of injuries, across the line. What's the status of Christian McCaffrey? I know there was a little bit of, was it a calf maybe early on in training camp? How's he, any rumors coming out about him?
Yeah, there hasn't been too much about Christian McCaffrey. Like he hasn't been participating in team period or anything like that, but he has been doing some side work. I think early on, like they did mention that if it was the regular season, he would be out there. So it seems more like a precautionary thing on the 49ers. And I would expect that either tomorrow when they get the bonus practice or Wednesday, he'll be out there full go.
Now I know that Elijah Mitchell went on the season-ending IR. So if McCaffrey does need to get kind of subbed out and somebody hops in, Jordan Mason's the new backup, right? And how much, or tell us about Jordan Mason. Can we expect to see the speedster out of Louisville, Isaac Guerendo, or is he just kind of more depth piece? Talk to us about the backup guys.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely see Jordan Mason like at least a few snaps in this game. McCaffrey doesn't like to go out all that much, but Jordan Mason, he's a bruiser, man, and he's the kind of guy that's like he's Debo as a running back. Like he's just gonna fight for every yard. He's a train out there, so I think it's probably more likely they deploy him in the second half. Guys maybe a little little tired, things like that. You want to test that a little bit. I think Mason's someone who's going to make some guys pay. And then not Elijah Mitchell, Isaac Guerendo. Yeah, he's super fast. I think like the first time we saw him was in the preseason game, the final preseason game against the Raiders, and you saw him take that return 93 yards. So you see right away just, the impact that he can have, with his speed. That's like the speed they had with Raheem Mostert. And so I'm not sure what the expectation is as far as like how many snaps he'll be playing for this team, but I have to imagine that Kyle Shanahan is probably excited to play with a new toy and one that reminds him of an old toy he had in Raheem Mostert, right? So it wouldn't shock me if he got some snaps as well, but of course I think we'll also see him get some return as well.
I see Jake in the
Cool
chat.
beans.
Jake says, is Brock Purdy going to run for his life? If he doesn't, he's going to be buried 6 feet deep. Our defense is going to absolutely smoke Brock Purdy, going to make him look like a seventh round pick, Mr. Relevant. Jets got our own.
Yeah, shout out to
Relevant.
𝐃𝐨𝐦 too. Shout out to 𝐃𝐨𝐸 for being in the chat, man. Good dude.
What's the over under on Purdy sacks for this one?
I don't
Good
know
question.
offhand. I would bet Jet fans would probably want to see like the over under set at 3.5, and I think the hope is that we can get to him. Obviously, we don't have Hassan Reddick right now. I don't think any Jet fan really thinks he's going to be here for week 1. I think he's gonna sit out for the entirety of the week. Try to hope that the Jets lose to the 49ers and really struggle in the pass rush side of things. Now, the rest of our defensive line is really, really good. Jermaine Johnson has been a stud going into his 3rd year. I think whoever is on the left-hand side, even if it's Trent Williams, honestly, just coming back right now, I think it would give him a little bit of problems. Who is going to be your left tackle if Trent is not ready to go?
It will be Jalen Moore, who he was mostly there for training camp because, Trent wasn't out there and, he had to go up against Nick Bosa, Leonard Floyd, and he's very up and down, like inconsistent. There'll be times where he'll have some nice reps against those guys, which is admirable. And then there's other times where it's like, okay, yeah, you're not Trent Williams, get out of here kind of thing. So I think there's going to be some ups and downs in the game as well. And like we were talking with Aaron Banks having struggles of his own, like it's going to feel like each of those guys are kind of on their own island going up against their respective matchups, right? So that's a concern for me. You want to ask me, I'd actually I'd go over on 3.5. I'd say maybe 4.
Damn.
But Purdy has some wheels. I think he is gonna use his legs in this one. But the thing we were talking about, the interior pressure, like it's a little harder to, you can't move up in the pocket or things like that. It's a little harder to go to your outside when you're getting pressure up the middle, right? So that could make it a little tougher. But I'm sure we'll see some runs from him as well.
Yeah. Steph, let's flip on the other side of the ball. Talk to us about the Niners defense, because arguably the best you can make the argument that these two teams are two of the best defenses in the league. I don't know what DVOA or PFF had either of them ranked off the top of my head, but obviously we know that the Niners defense is good. Tell us what to expect, what makes you kind of warm and fuzzy and what doesn't make you warm and fuzzy on the defensive side of the ball. And by the way, screw Leonard Floyd. He's the reason Rodgers went down last year. So, let him step on a Lego. Let him step on a Lego right before the game barefoot for all I care.
Burn his
Isn't
tongue
that
on some hot
crazy that he has
coffee.
to go up against?
I know.
That is
the most jet. That is the jettiest thing that could be. Yeah, it's the most jet thing that you could ever imagine. Prime time again, same guy, same Monday Night Football thing. It's crazy, but I digress.
Scriptwriters, they're at it again. Well, also I want to thank you for switching it on to the defense. I was starting to get a little depressed talking about the offensive line of the 49ers, but yeah, just some of the things that I think will be different, or not different, but I think the 49ers secondary is going to be a lot better this year. And, they're not going to have Hufanga for this game. I don't expect him to play in week 1. So you're going to see George Odom and you're going to see Jair Brown. George Odom, he's a veteran. He's been with the team for, a couple years now. But I think in training camp, he looked ready for an expanded role. Like he played pretty well. So I think he'll be fine filling in. And Jair Brown just looks like he's poised to make a second-year leap. Like he just looks so good. And you kind of saw it at the end in the postseason. He was starting to like get some footing, and now you really see like he has a handle on it. He's basically like a veteran in that
Yeah.
secondary now. That's just how much he's grown. So expecting, you know, he'll have a great season. And then, I mean, our corners have improved so much. The corner depth, I'd say. You still have the top two guys in Deommodore Lenoir, Mooney Ward. I feel like Lenoir is one of those guys that's, you know, getting slept on throughout the league, right? Like he wasn't an all-pro last year. You could make the argument that, you know, he did deserve to maybe get that. I think this year he's kind of looking for blood, and he's trying to make a name for himself in this league. And so I think Lenoir's going to have a really good season. We'll see who like covers Garrett Wilson in this game. I don't know if it'll be.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Do they plan to have Ward follow? I would assume Ward is the one, you know, and when you're talking about CB1, CB2, do you guys normally follow the number one receiver on your scheme? Just like
not usually.
Yeah, we don't.
Not usually. I will say when they do 3 wide receiver sets, like Lenoir will be in the slot, which is a good spot for him as well. And then you'll probably see Isaac Yiadom on the outside in those cases. But no, normally it's just you know, whichever
Left
side.
corner, right corner. Yeah,
exactly. The only time that Mooney Ward followed someone was DK Metcalf last season. That was it. So we'll see what happens. But honestly, I feel confident in either of Ward or Lenoir going up against Garrett Wilson. Like I think it'll be a really good matchup. You'll see some wins, you'll see some losses between each of those guys.
Yeah, I think on our defensive side, I'm hoping that like Sauce goes against Debo and like Reed goes against Ayuk.
You want Sauce against Debo? You don't want him on BA?
Dude. I mean, he could. He's just smaller and shiftier, DA or BA. I think having Debo, I think he would out-muscle Reed or Carter. I think just from like a size perspective. Dom, what do you think about our corner?
I got to tell you that matchup is not necessarily concerning. Like which one? First off, I'm confident that they're going to play left and right like they always do. So I think the whole following the number one receiver is something in Jets world has been talked about or overblown. That's not. My bigger concern is I want to see how the Jets roll out to defend George Kittle. You know, the tight end has always been something that is a sore point in coverage, not just in coverage, but in the defense or offenses have always been able to successfully use the tight end against us. You know, and Kittle's right up there with the best of them. Obviously, we know how physically he plays. We know, you know, his role as a blocker is one thing, but what he can do in the middle of the field, he might not have that breakaway speed and split up the seams and so on and so forth, like the Kyle Pittses of the world and so on and so forth. But man, I don't know at this day and age where we best line. Like, you know, I would think off the top of my head, like, you know, Tony Adams is going to probably be on him.
I was going to say maybe Ashton Davis coming down into the box or something.
Yeah, well, I could probably see Tony Adams coming down and you know, in those rare situations that they do man up, you know, obviously, yeah, Steph, you know, from your solid days where a lot of the time spent in zone anyway, I think 83% of the time in, you know, between cover 4 and cover 6. But I think Tony Adams is going to be given the first responsibilities to cover George Kittle. And although I like Tony Adams and you know, size wise, he doesn't compare to Kittle and, you know, experience wise, that could be something that's completely advantageous to San Francisco. So that's my bigger concern. I'm not necessarily, and I don't say this like in as a braggart. Like it's not that I'm not concerned about the wide receivers. I'm more concerned of how we're going to slow down George Kittle than I am the receivers. They'll work themselves out.
Yeah, that's fair. And I do feel like this could be a big Kittle game, not just because of the things you mentioned, but obviously like 2 really solid outside corners that you guys have. Like it kind of just makes sense. Of course, also with the questions of Brandon Ayuk coming back after just a week of practicing with the team. We don't know what that's going to look like. And, Deebo's not the greatest route runner to begin with. So I feel like this could make way for a big Kittle game. And yeah, he's a tough cover. I think for us 49er fans, like a point of frustration is that like he's not always featured in the game plan as much, but when he is, like, he'll have those boom date. Anyone who has had George Kittle in a fantasy team knows what it could go like. You either have one game with like 0.3, 1 point or something like that, and then he'll have like 2 tutties in the next week. Like, so it could be one of those Kittle games. In this one, it definitely wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, our linebackers, I mean, 𝐶𝐨 Mosley, as good as, he still is, listen, he's a little long in the tooth and he's definitely lost a step or 6, so asking him to man up on Kittle or McCaffrey out of the backfield is always going to be is always going to be a tough test. So, I would assume that it's Tony Adams' responsibility, and you see a lot more big nickel with 3 safeties on the field, whether it's, Isaiah Oliver playing, the single high post, or Ashton Davis, or some combination of Ashton Davis and Chuck Clark also on the field. But I think Tony Adams' main responsibility is going to be George Kittle. And I think that's a risky proposition just because I think George Kittle is him. So that to me is the biggest, my biggest concern when we're on defense and the Niners are on offense.
I have Hennessy in here. Hennessy says, I got Mike Williams with a touchdown and Will McDonald with a sack in this game. Hassan will be punching air after week 1 because it's all downhill after that. Yeah, we start on a high note with the 49ers. Hopefully we can capture that W. Allen comes in and says, no cut blocks against Floyd this time. I hope Brock Purdy has some good health insurance. 5th offensive play for the Jets is a touchdown.
That would be that would be poetic justice if they scored on the 5th offensive play. I like that, Alan.
It would be wonderful. Jet It Out, thank you so much for the super chat. Says, Kittle is the X factor. Remember what Njoku did. It was embarrassing, and Ulbrich had no answer, and better have a few quarterback Purdy on crucial downs. A few quarterback hits, pressures, I think that's what he's maybe saying.
Well, I will say something to that point, Ryan, because I think it's fair. And if we're going to be critical about you're going to be critical about the Jets and Jeff Ulbrich and Robert Sala's defense, you're sometimes pulling at straws. Although it's not perfect. I mean, they're as good of a unit as other. The coaching staff does seem like it takes too long to correct or make adjustments, so on and so forth. So, he was referring to the Njoku game against Cleveland, where, I mean, the first half, what did he go for? 120 yards, 6 receptions, 120 yards, something like that. And then they just decided to change things up. I don't know if they bracketed him high, low, or whatever they made the change, but it was probably a quarter and a half too late before they make those changes. You give Kyle Shanahan's mind that kind of time to like surgically, cut you apart, and you're going to be trying to chase 3 scores right away. So, pressure's on the coaching staff to adjust where they need to, and that's what I love about the chess match about this game. Shanahan, I mean, there's no denying he's as good of an offensive mind as there is in this game. I really believe that to an extent, not saying it with green goggles, of Saleh and his defense as well.
Yeah, I'm expecting this game to be low scoring, to be honest with you. And yeah, I mean, I don't think that's surprising. And it's really going to come down to what offense can adjust to whatever the defense is doing, right? And who could do that the fastest in this game, or the smartest. So yeah, I could see like a score of like 10-3, 10-7 in this one, and maybe no higher than that.
Yeah. So
I took the
Steph,
under. I think the points is 44.
44, is it really?
I think that's what I saw. Yeah,
that's way too high.
Yeah, I'm gonna pound that. I'm gonna drill that under right when we get off this. Bet USA, people. Now, Steph, let me ask you. Let's from your perspective, you know the Niners as good as anybody. You've been named head coach of the New York Jets, right? Devise a plan. What's the best way to attack the Niners and win the game, whether it's offensive, defensive, so on and so forth. Let's flip the script a little bit.
I think you got to attack that offensive line any way you can. Stunts, anything that can confuse some things up front and make it difficult on Purdy. Force him to get the ball out quick, and take the short stuff. I think we didn't even talk about the right side of the line. I know we talked about
Colton
Pooney, but
McKivitz.
Colton
Listen,
McKivitz is also.
Yeah, when you started to seem a little depressed about the offensive line, I figured I'd back off the McKivitz stuff. Now listen,
Well, I'll
man.
do it for you. I'm not too hot on Colton McKivitz. He's fine. He's kind of like Aaron Banks, where it's like you can have him on a line and you can survive. I mean, obviously the 49ers made it to the Super Bowl last year, right? But like, I just didn't see any improvements from him in camp in the preseason, and we're talking about this particular defensive line. I think he's going to struggle. So yeah, I think that's what I would attack, and obviously the left side of the line as well. So whatever you can do to muddy some things up front, you got to do that. And I honestly I wouldn't be worried about you guys' secondary at all, because I think it's one of the best. So I think you got to put pressure on Purdy and try to get that first and foremost.
What's the best way to attack your defense?
Honestly, I don't know. Like, I'm not really sure what the defense is going to look like this year. I do expect the secondary is going to be improved. As far as the defensive line goes, try some runs, because like I'm not convinced that the run defense has improved much since last season. I mean, you guys saw in the playoffs that was a huge issue for them, and new defensive coordinator Brandon Staley's in there as well. But I think it'll take some time to really know whether or not they've truly improved that.
Is Fred Warner still him?
He's still him. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, listen, I forgot that's actually a good point. I forgot Staley was there. Like somehow Staley and the Chargers defense, I mean, made a Zach Wilson led offense look like Swiss cheese. Like they ate us up in MetLife Stadium last year. So that doesn't bode very well. I forgot that he was actually there. Yeah, man. Their defense is the defense is good. The San Francisco defense is good. The Jets defense is good as well. And I can't wait for this matchup to get here. Rye, how would you attack the Jets if you were named? You kick Shanahan to the curb and you got the head coaching gig, bud, for San Fran.
Ooh, do you want me to do offense? You do defense, or vice versa?
Yeah, that's cool. Well, either one.
All right. So if I were attacking the Jets offense right now, I'd probably. I mean, you got to test out the tackles, right? Like Tyron and Moses were both injured last year. Pretty frequently they had little rest days, things like that throughout training camp. Maybe just test them, see how they're doing at their elevated age. Our center, Joe Tippmann, has had a little bit of snapping problems. So if you have a defensive tackle that can kind of cause a little bit of havoc up front first, that might cause a little bit of chaos. Our offensive line has 4 new day one starters than we had last year. The only returning starter is AVT at the right guard spot. So we're still kind of up in the air as to what that's going to look like. As far as like, I guess I would say, load the box and force us to beat you through the air right now, because we don't really know what Mike Williams is. We haven't really seen him yet. We know Garrett's a stud. And then outside of that, it's like, okay, is Lazard going to be, a better version of himself compared to last year? Last year, he was very underwhelming. And I know Breece is a stud. So if you can stop Breece, then you kind of maybe shade some coverage towards Garrett and just hope that Mike Williams and the other guys don't really get to feast. I do expect Tyler Conklin to have a little bit more use in this offense, but we haven't seen Aaron Rodgers really play with us at all. So it's kind of to be determined on really all fronts for the New York Jets.
Yeah. So if
I'm about the offensive line, you guys have 4 new starters. Yeah, I would say sometimes it takes some time for those offensive lines to gel when you got so many new pieces there. So for our sake, hoping you guys aren't clicking in week 1.
If I'm the San Francisco offense and I'm attacking the Jets defense, well, to me, it's well, it's not. It's never easy. When you're facing either one of these defenses, it's not going to be easy. But I think you have to. Like I already talked about Kittle. I think Kittle can be the real X factor. But outside of that, I think you got to utilize. You got to use the Jets' aggression and aggressive nature against them. A lot of counters, a lot of misdirection stuff, a lot of getting them moving one way and going the other. The running backs out of the backfield are going to be huge. Quick, short passing. Like I don't think I think this for real. And if I was coordinating the Niners offense, I don't think you're going to see a lot of deep developing routes, full stem, not a lot of 7-step drop back. I think you're going to see a lot of quick action stuff. Get the ball out of the hand of Brock Purdy, get it in the hands of the playmakers, and let them hopefully make something happen. The Jets have always been susceptible to screens. I expect Kyle Shanahan to run a few of those. I'm using the Jets' aggressive nature and aggressive, vertical pressing nature against them, and to my advantage. Get the ball out in space. Get the ball out in your playmakers' hands in space, and let them make something happen.
It's that Miami-style offense where the O-line might not be fantastic, but you get the ball out so fast to your playmakers, it neutralizes our pass rush like immediately.
Well, we didn't even talk about Jacob Cowing, but he also looked great in the last 2 preseason games that he was in. He missed most of camp, but when he got that playing time, he just looks like he belongs, and he's a field stretcher. So you mentioned the screens. I could see some screens going to him, especially if Brandon Ayuk is on a pitch count at all.
Yeah, you guys also drafted my guy Malik Mustafa, man. He was one of my favorite prospects in this class. Oh man, what depth in that defensive backfield, right? That safety room, having Jair Brown, Malik Mustafa, and Hufanga for the next 5-7 years. I mean, Christ, that's depth of riches right there. Yeah, I forgot Cowan was even on the team, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. Like, he's so good, Dude catches everything, wins at 3 levels. I mean, I don't know. Again, like you would know more how much he's going to be involved in this, in the offensive scheme or in the play scheme. But he's another guy you got to keep a hold of. Good thing is I'm comfortable with our nickel cornerback shutting down whatever slot receivers there. Like Michael Carter's the truth, man.
Yeah, he's a stud.
Yeah.
Boys and girls, we got about 15 minutes left. Steph, do we have you for another 15 minutes, or you want to head out?
Yeah.
Cool. Steph's going to hang with us. If you guys have any questions in the chat, drop a Q with a colon next to it, and then I'll know that it is a question. I'll throw it up on the screen as we go through stuff. I think I saw one earlier in here. Let me just find it real quick. Oh, no, I was talking about Quinnen. See, that's what gets me.
We didn't talk about, well, we touched a little bit on Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason, the running backs, but not only do we have 2 of the best defenses playing, as units, but you might have 2 of the best running backs in the league in this game as well. In CMC and Breece Hall. I mean, listen, the crown is Christian McCaffrey's, and there's no denying or taking that. But Breece at 24 years old is just priming up and becoming that true all-around weapon that Christian McCaffrey has. Christian McCaffrey is, and I think I'll speak for most Jets fans. I know I speak for Ryan. If we can get 75% of the career that Christian McCaffrey's had out of Breece Hall, I think that's a win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love Breece Hall's game, and I do think both offenses are going to try to get their running backs going early. That's another way you can try to neutralize defenses a little bit if the run game is going well. And I mean, we've seen a lot of success with Christian McCaffrey, and so I honestly think like they've been wanting to keep him kind of under wraps. Like, yeah, he's still dealing with this calf injury, so they can kind of unleash him in week 1. Maybe that's just hopeful thinking on my part, but yeah, that's the expectation for me, and I'm sure the same will be for Breece, because first game back in so many days of inaction for Aaron Rodgers. I think you kind of want to ease him back into it, right? So what better way to do that than Breece Hall? And I think there's going to be some room for him to run. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in this one.
Yeah, it's funny because we have like everyone, obviously the offense is going to go as Aaron Rodgers takes it, but we've been saying for a while, like they really want to be a Breece Hall led offense with Aaron Rodgers just kind of picking up the scraps and kind of being that quasi, dare I say, I hate to use the term game manager, like it's a lot different having him back there than having the Zach Wilsons in the Trevor Simeons of the world that we faced last year. I mean, that's just going to opens up so much more space for Breece Hall. So I think the team, like you hit it on the head. I think the Jets per se want to run the ball and run the ball effectively first. It shows by the changes they've made in this offensive line. They've completely switched from a more outside zone dominant team to a more of a gap power duo. They brought in some bruisers. You're gonna see a lot of duo. You're gonna see a lot of counters. You're gonna see a lot of traps. You're gonna see a lot of bully ball with the running game. And Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, and they got the guys with the big build that can do it. So I think they want to run first and let Aaron Rodgers pick up the scraps. But I see you got some questions, Ryan. Go ahead.
Dano comes in, says, Steph, does Garendo, am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, Garendo, you're right.
Get buried all year, or will he get some work running with the first team offense?
So my sense is that, obviously he's going to be the third guy on the depth chart. I do still feel like Jordan Mason would be ahead of him. And obviously Christian McCaffrey, like I said, doesn't like to get off the field for any reason. I think Garendo's opportunity is going to be in kick returns. And I think he's going to have that from week 1 on. And he'll probably get mixed in. Like he was getting some work with the first team in training camp while Christian McCaffrey was out. Again, with McCaffrey back in, I'm not sure what that split really looks like. So I wouldn't expect too much. I think in certain situations they'll want to get that speed factor in there. They'll put Garendo in, but I'm not expecting like a huge role from him. And I'll also say this, like it really all depends on how he looks in pass protection, a lot of other things that us fantasy football players, sometimes we forget about those things. But that's part of the reason why some guys don't get on the field right away, or maybe they're not getting as many opportunities as they would. That's kind of been Jordan Mason's thing for the last few years, but I think this year he's improved on that. So it's part of the reason why he's getting an opportunity as the number 2.
Jay-Z comes in here, says, Steph, how are your special teams? If it's close game, could come down to that. So we love our kicker in 𝐒𝐻erline. We love our punter in Morstead, and very excited to see how this new kick return is going to shake out. There's been rumors that Quincy Williams may wind up actually kicking off for us because he can kick a ball 60 yards and it just allows us to have an extra tackler. So is there anything that we should be on the watch out for the 49ers on a special teams perspective?
Yeah, I thought the special teams coverage was not good for the 49ers in the preseason, at least. Especially like in the first preseason game, there was like a lot of missed tackles, things like that. So I don't know how much dialed in they're going to be in week 1. But I did see the coverage unit not look so great. So depending on who's your guys' return guys?
So it depends who it's actually going to be.
It could be Malachi Corley, could be Xavier Gibson, could be rookie running back Isaiah Davis. They've had Braylon Allen take some snaps back there. The guy who returned the main kick returner from the preseason, Brendan Codgerton, got traded, before we made the cuts. And I personally think what you saw in preseason in terms of returns isn't what you're going to see in regular season. I don't think any team was really going to show the bag.
True.
So.
I mean, that's fair as well. I was just like, the coverage unit did worry me some because that was an issue last year. So my first thought was, God, this hasn't improved. So I guess we'll see. We'll see in week 1. I will say, as far as returns go, I think that will be perfect for Isaac Garendo, like I said, and then also Jacob Cowan, because those guys are fast.
Yeah.
So and we saw them both have really good returns in the preseason. So I feel good about that. Just not so much about the coverage unit and
Jake Moody.
Jake Moody's like, you never know what you're gonna get. He's like a box of chocolates, man.
Yeah, I know. Listen, I mean, they took him early. They took him, obviously they have faith in him. And I mean, he's a kicker. So you guess, listen, we played the kicker roulette for so long. So now we got old man Zerline in there for the past couple of years, and he's been automatic, fingers crossed.
Big fella comes in and says, which Jets UDFA gets significant playing time on Monday? Tom, is there someone out there that you think could see extended playing time, or are we seeing all vets?
Of the wow, that's a good question. Well, considering 𝐒𝐿 is on the short-term IR, I think to me it makes the most sense that probably Leonard Taylor is the UDFA that sees the most significant playing time. Obviously, I'm assuming you're talking about the UDFAs from this draft class. I would probably say Leonard Taylor, if anybody. I mean, listen, there's also a chance that all three of them, the three defenders that they kept as UDFAs, are inactive week one, especially if Reddick somehow miraculously comes in and signs and suits, or not signs, but shows up and suits up for week one. I think there's probably a better chance that all three of them may be inactive. But, it's a dart throw, man. If I had to guess on one, I'd say just because of the positional flexibility that Taylor has over the edge guys, I'd probably say Leonard Taylor.
We get a question here. Hey, Steph, what's your prediction on the game between Jets and 49ers? Are you guys worried? You worried about us week one?
I am a little bit. I know there's like other 49er fans who look at the Jets as being the lowly Jets, and they've always been bad. So like just expecting them to always be bad and have misfortunes. But like I said, I feel like you guys are out for blood. I feel like something's going to be different this year. So I am a little worried about this game, just because I'd be more confident if the 49ers had a lot of their ducks in a row. Like obviously the Brandon Ayuk thing took way too long. There's a lot of uncertainty around that. I think there still is going into week one. Trent Williams still a question mark. And there's also just still a couple of injuries, to track. We didn't talk about it, but yet Gross Matos, who was trying to be a starter for the defensive line. He's also hurt. He had a knee sprain, suffered in the last preseason game. So he's week to week. And so we could see, maybe one of the backups in there as well.
And
Leonard,
as far as like the prediction for the score. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I just saw like the next question and I was like, about the toll. Like I said, I think the score will be like 10-3, 10-7 or something like that. I mean, I got to go with the Niners here, but through the skin of their teeth, I think they'll get this one.
NY Curse comes in asking, is there a toll on the Golden Gate Bridge?
There's a pretty big toll on the Golden Gate Bridge. Now you don't have to, you get like the little fast track thing that you just drive through and they give you the bill in the mail. But I want to say it's like, so I don't live in the Bay Area for like the last 3 years now. I've been in Colorado, but I think it's like up to 12.
Oh, that's nothing compared to New York. We got, I think the Lincoln Tunnel's $16 or George Washington's $16. The Throg's Neck, I think, is 13 each way. Oh, it sucks.
Yeesh.
Yeah, not fun over here. Rusty Spooner comes in, says, Steph, how do you feel about the Madden curse? Do you think it's legit?
Good question, Rusty.
Yeah, that's a fun question. And one that I definitely discussed this offseason too, for the obvious reasons. But I think it's not so much a thing anymore. I think if you asked me a few years ago, I'd have been like, oh my God, yes, this is a thing, because it was a thing for a really long time. Now I don't really see it as much of a thing. I think it ended after the Antonio Brown season. And so since then it's been fine. And I think if you give a curse power, if we're believing in it, it will happen. So I'm choosing to not give it any power. I'm not believing in it.
All right, Dom, you and I are going to hold hands and just, give it as much power as we can. We got just let it manifest this Madden curse as best we can. Not that I want to see CMC hurt, but maybe
No, I don't want to see. I don't want to see him hurt.
Oh, I want to see him
Where's
step on
my
a Lego
airplane
like
voodoo doll? I think I have it here somewhere. I need to get
stabbing him
that
with
out.
pins. We used to have a guy.
I don't want to see anybody hurt, but I'm not gonna lie. Me and my kids have added prayers to Trent Williams' agent that he gets lost for a week. Just lost, not hurt. The agent gets lost, so they can't hammer anything out.
Just goes on a darkness retreat for a little bit.
Be ready to rock, dude. I'm all for it, dude. I'm all for it. Oh man, good stuff.
Let's see. Do we got anything else in here before we hang it up? Dano saying, this game means so much more to the Jets than the 49ers. I think that sheer force of will get it done for us. I worry more about the hangover after that and coming out of the game whole, obviously. So obviously, yeah, we want to come out with as many healthy players as possible. But I do think there is a little bit more juice from the Jets side of things just because of how the 49ers have kind of trended into this week, not having Trent Williams right now, just figuring out the Brandon Ayuk stuff. Obviously, everything hanging over them with Pearsall's injury this past weekend. Just a lot of like what ifs and turmoil, I feel like, on your team. With us, it's really only Hassan Reddick, and I think Jet fans and honestly probably the team too is like, we can do it without him. Like, let's see what we could do. And just like all the firepower that we've had the last or feel that we should have had the last year and a half or so is finally going to come to fruition and hopefully have a full game from Aaron Rodgers. Dom, what are your thoughts
listen,
on that?
I think that I think what you said is true, that there's a little bit of there's been turmoil with BA and the tackle in San Francisco, this, that, and the other thing. For us, it's we still and I'm speaking realistically, full disclosure, like there's still a little bit of us that it's still a little bit of the unknown, right? We had 4 plays with Aaron last year. We didn't see any of although the starters worked their asses off in camp, Saleh held everyone out of preseason. So we still have not seen this unit on the offensive side of the field play together, So I would have loved to have week 1 against maybe, New England. I'm trying to think of some of the on paper lesser teams, like then having to travel west to San Francisco, who's coming off a Super Bowl, in prime time, like all that stuff lines up, does not favor the Jets. But I don't know if there's a good time. I don't know if there's a better time in the year, whether it's the beginning, whether it's the end, to face a team like San Francisco. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a dogfight. I'm confident, but I'm also eerily cautious because the reality is there's still a lot of the unknown on what's happening with this offense. We still have not seen, outside of, with my eyes, watching them, the Jets and Giants practice. That's really all I've seen the offense go against live competition. So it's to be determined, I guess.
So, Steph, I just want to thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with us tonight. It was great getting a little bit of insight into the enemy. I want you to plug your channel, let us know where we can find you. And guys, if you haven't done so already, Steph's link is in the description down below. Please give her a follow.
Yeah, appreciate both of you for having me on. This was a lot of fun. I can't wait to share this intel with the 49ers about the Jets. And but you guys can follow me on all the social media networks, all the main ones at least. Steph 49K, 49Cares podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And yeah, we'll be previewing this game all this week. So if you guys want some more 49ers intel, I mean, what better way to get it than through me? Just saying.
Dom,
and guys, if you don't know, Steph does a mean impression of Bosa. I know it went viral. I know the little clip on there. I think he even chimed in and maybe had a conversation with you about it. But it's a ridiculously good impression of Bosa. So go out there and search it.
Let me just do a little Nick Bosa send off here.
Yeah,
I'll just say, well, I think they had a 12.5 prediction for my stocks this year, but it's an election year, so I'd bet the over.
Kudos, Steph. Awesome.
Steph, thank you so
Awesome
much
stuff.
for hanging out with us tonight. It's been a lot of fun. Boys and girls, we're going to send you over to my channel, Jets Talk 24/7. Got the call-in show going on over there. Boys and girls, it's been a lot of fun hanging out with you. This is Talkin' Jets signing off. Jets!
Jets, Jets, Jets!